Good evening, everyone. So today we are doing the last session in the series that we started last week. So today we are going to be focusing exclusively on grammar, vocabulary, and usage. We will be looking at the last 5 years or so, starting from XAT 2018 all the way till XAT 23. Now, I've tried to cover as many question types as possible. Wherever there is a nugget of information that I can share that will make grammar easier for you, I will try to do that. And of course, you'll be learning a lot of words as well. So let's get started. The thing that I really wanted to highlight in this session is that usually there are only a few questions based on grammar and vocabulary. So in the last few days, it wouldn't really be very helpful to start mugging up word lists because the kind of questions that they ask are very heavily dependent on your knowledge of how these words are used. So yes, the meaning is important, but usage is even more important. So since we tend to run out of time, let's get started with the vocab and usage bit. Now, please take a look at this particular question. It says that you have to read these sentences carefully, and then from amongst the following options, you have to choose the correct sentences. Now, when it says correct, it has to be correct in every possible way. So, grammatically correct. And when we talk about grammar, it means you have to keep in mind all the rules of grammar that you might have learned in the past: subject-verb agreement, tenses, prepositions, articles. And in some cases, you might also consider something more complicated, for example, moods and conditionals. So it's a little open-ended, this sort of a question, and therefore it's best to start eliminating options as soon as you are absolutely certain that a particular sentence is incorrect. For example, if we take a look at the first sentence here, the exam will begin from 2 p.m. on January 8th. To a lot of us, this sentence sounds absolutely correct. Is there anything that you see wrong? In case you don't, you should move on to the next question. Now, the next one says, while entering into the college building, he saw the statue of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, think about this. Do you enter into a building or do you enter a building? So, normally I would say while entering the college building. So, this tells me that two might actually be incorrect. The moment I have a feeling that I've identified an error, I need to start looking at the options. So, for example, here, I will say that this word should not be there, which means that any option that contains two as an option should be eliminated. Now, please note that we're looking for the correct sentences. Therefore, I should cancel out option 2 here. I should cancel out option 4 as well. Now, let's look at the third sentence. The government has entered into a discussion with the local bodies for keeping the streets clean. Now, at the first reading, I don't really see much wrong there. So we move on to the next sentence. I will start my world tour from Sri Lanka, which means that that is where the tour will begin. That is, again, all right. There is nothing wrong. Let's move on to the next one. Amitabh Bachchan is married with Jaya Bachchan. Now here, you don't have to check the facts. Factually, yes, that is correct. Grammatically, however, it is not correct. Amitabh Bachchan is married with someone. You are actually married to someone. Therefore, I know for sure that sentence 5 is incorrect, which means that I can perhaps cancel out a few more options here. Now, 3 and 4 are definitely correct. All I really need to do is check 1 and 6. The exam will begin from 2 p.m. Let's say if it still sounds correct to you, go to sentence 6. I have been working on this project for 3 weeks. Now, what do you think about that? That also sounds correct. So at this point, if you are unsure and if you have absolutely no idea, I would still say maybe don't mark an answer because there is negative marking. However, if you're able to spot the error, and the error in fact lies in the first sentence, the exam begins at a particular time, not from a particular time. So whenever you want to talk about duration, you say that the exam will be held or will probably be conducted from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Then you're referring to a duration. But when you're just talking about a starting time, then you say it will begin at. And therefore, I know that the first sentence cannot be correct, which means that my answer should be option 1. So you can follow the process of elimination, or you can simply figure out which sentences are correct if you can do it that way. But I would always advise that you eliminate a few sentences that you're absolutely sure are wrong and then work with the options. So here my answer is definitely option 1. Now let's move on to the next one. Let me just clear all the annotations here. Now here also you have to identify the options, but now please note we have to identify the incorrect options. So please take a look, do your best. So 4 seems to be a very popular option from what I can see. I mean, almost everyone is saying 4. So let's take a look at the first sentence. The boss accused her employee for. Now, the word accused is typically followed by of. You are accused of a particular thing. So the first sentence is definitely incorrect. Let me say that for must be replaced. Now, since the first one is definitely incorrect, that pretty much narrows down my options to option number 3 and option number 4. Let's look at the remaining. The boss had better discuss the issue with the employee concerned. Now, this particular statement over here, this phrase is a little unfamiliar to us. So let me just explain what it means. When you say that you had better do something, it is equal to saying you should do something. It is just advice. That's it. It's some sort of mandatory advice. It's more like you have to do this. But this is correct phrasing. So there's nothing wrong with to per se. Let's look at the third one. The India of 2022 is very different from the India of 1947. Something is different from something else. Seems to be all right. Let's look at the fourth one. The government is committed to. Yes, you are committed to a particular cause and you provide people with. So here we have two phrases that you should be familiar with. Let me just highlight that. Please remember that one is normally accused of, you are different from, you are committed to something, and you provide someone with something. Now let's take a look at the last one. Are you good in something? No. Even if you're used to saying that, it's time that we changed it. It should be good at. And so all the people who are saying that option 4 is the answer, you're absolutely right. The incorrect sentences are 1 and 5. There's nothing wrong with 2. So please remember, because you might need this for later, you had better or someone had better is equal to saying you must or you should. Okay. So after this, you simply give advice. It could be anything. You should study every day, for example, which is equal to saying you had better study every day. It's exactly the same message. So please keep this in mind and let me just highlight the answer here. Okay. Now here, there is a doubt. The fourth one should be to provide. Okay, I understand why you're saying that. Okay, let me just also explain this part because this does tend to confuse people. See, normally there is something called the infinitive, right? So we say to eat. Similarly, we would expect to say to provide. But what we have to understand here is that the to in sentence 4 is not really being used as part of the infinitive. It's not that. We're not trying to say to provide. We're actually trying to say that someone is committed to doing something. So the moment you say committed to, you are allowed to use an ing verb after that. You could also have said that I am committed to universal education, for example. But if you want to use some sort of an action, then you'll have to say that I am committed to doing something or providing something. So that providing is absolutely correct. Nothing wrong there. This actually is a part of the chapter on prepositions, and prepositions, because there is very little logic to it, are often very confusing. Therefore, we all say that it is a part of usage. It's not really grammar in the true sense of the term. Okay, so I was just trying to cover that question. Let's move on to the next one. Now here, it's an interesting question because it actually asks you to check for correct punctuation. But you can actually do this question even if you're not very good at punctuation. So see if you can figure out the answer. That's a really good example. I'm looking forward to seeing you. You don't say I'm looking forward to see you. So looking forward to is followed by some ing verb. Yes. Okay, let's take a look at this one now. The reason I said that you can solve this question even if you're not very great at punctuation is that there is another clue to the answer. See, when you say Italy is famous for its composers and musicians, there is something called pronoun antecedent agreement. So remember I told you that I'll try and share a little bit of grammar wherever possible. So whenever we talk about pronoun antecedent agreement, what we need to understand is that when I say it's, I'm referring to Italy, which is a single country. So it's correct to say Italy is famous for its composers. Now, if I read the first sentence further, France for its chefs and philosophers, and Poland for its mathematicians and logicians. So the pronoun has been correctly used. Now, whether you call it a pronoun or whether you call it an adjective, let's not worry about that. But when you refer to a country, since it is one country, you should say its. Now, keeping this in mind, if we look at the second sentence, it's very easy to say that it is wrong. See, I cannot say that France is famous for their chefs because France is again one country. There cannot refer to France. It will have to be its. Similarly, there is incorrect because it must be its. I'm referring to Poland. Now, if I follow the same logic, I can cancel out option 2 and I can also cancel out option 3. Let's look at 4. Its composers, its chefs, and its mathematicians and logicians. So I should keep option 4. Let's look at the fifth one. Now here again, I have its, and its. So now I still have to choose between 3 options. According to what you are saying, there is some confusion. Now, let's take a look at this particular option. We all know how to use a full stop, right? We use a full stop at the end of a sentence. Okay, you cannot use a full stop at the end of a phrase or an incomplete sentence. That's not how full stops are used. So look at the second half from here to here. Is this a sentence? Not really. France for its chefs and philosophers. There is no verb there. Therefore, it's not a sentence. Therefore, I should not be using a full stop. So I can happily cancel out the fourth option as well. Now I'm left with only 2. So here, what is the difference between 1 and 5? It is the placement of the commas. Now, when we read the first one, it says Italy is famous for its composers and musicians. France for its chefs and philosophers. So there are 2 extra commas here. It's really not a good idea to say it out loud and then decide whether you should be pausing there. You simply need to know whether the comma needs to be there or not. Okay. So at this point, between 1 and 5, should the comma be there after France or should the comma not be there? How do you decide? Any idea? You can't say it out loud, okay? That's really not a very logical way, and you definitely should not be using that in the exam. See, whenever there is a description that is essential to whatever I'm talking about. So, for example, what am I really trying to say? France is famous for its chefs and philosophers. Okay? The description is essential to France, and therefore we should not use a comma. The comma usually indicates that this information is extra. It is not absolutely necessary. So the moment you realize that information is necessary, that it is an essential part of that sentence or the description, then you should not use a comma. So I can give you a few more examples as well, but maybe we'll take that up a little bit later. For now, without further confusion, the answer is option 5. Okay. Now, look at this part. And Poland, right? Should the and be there? Should the and not be there? That's actually a very difficult call to take. So I'm not even going to delve into that. Okay. So here a lot of people will say, oh, but we always have an and at the end. Yes, we could, but it's not absolutely mandatory. Let me just talk about the essential description bit. If I say, this is the cat that scratched me. Okay. Now, that scratched me is a description for the cat. Is it an important description? Does it help me identify the cat? Or is it extra information? What do you feel? The highlighted part, is it important to identifying the cat? Is it essential to this sentence? If it is, then I will not put a comma here. If it is not essential, then I will put a comma. Okay. So what we need to understand here is that a lot of times descriptions are necessary or unnecessary. How do you judge that? Well, sometimes the rules of grammar tell you. Now, some of you are using very fancy words like noun and apposition. Okay. For example, when we say, this is my friend, Ramesh. Yes. Okay. Now here, why are we putting a comma? Because my friend and Ramesh are essentially referring to the same person. So when I say this is my friend, that is equal to saying this person that I'm introducing to you is my friend. Ramesh is additional information about the friend. By the way, his name is Ramesh, is what we're really trying to say. So that is one way to look at the comma here. Okay. We do not put full stop at the end in the fifth option. That I think is my mistake. I think it's a typo. So if you based your answer on the missing full stop, then my apologies. The full stop is there. Okay. I'm really, really sorry. But the point that I was trying to make is that whenever the description is essential, please don't put a comma. Okay. So let's move on. And grammar can get very, very murky, people. Okay. So do not start mugging up the grammar book because a lot of grammar is simply convention. I mean, there isn't really much logic that I can tell you for a lot of things. So one of the questions that arose earlier was, why can't we say committed for? When you use committed in the sense that you're dedicated to a cause, then we always say committed to. Why do we do that? It's just convention. That's how it always has been. So that's going to be my answer for a lot of things. Now let's move on to something we all love, which is vocabulary. So this is your typical fill in the blanks question. We call it a closed paragraph. A closed paragraph basically is a paragraph with multiple blanks. So here, read the whole paragraph. In doing so, if you can come up with some sort of a predictive answer, that would be great. Okay, so these kind of questions are not very time consuming, particularly because the options have simple words. So I don't think vocabulary here is so much of an issue. However, you still have to use a little bit of reasoning. So the way that I would do it is to read the first sentence, say that it's saying something about social blank. But honestly, as a person, I would not be able to predict what should go into that blank. It could be social justice, it could be social reality. I really don't know. So the first blank is not very helpful. Let's move on to the second one. The second blank is very helpful. It reduced everything to the, and the first word that comes to my mind is level of objects. Okay. So I would say that based on the second blank, we should definitely keep option one. Can I say it reduced everything to the minuteness of objects? Now, this is taking it absolutely literally. Okay. So, um, okay. So for the punctuation question, let me just confirm the answer. It's always possible that my answer is wrong or that I misinterpreted or misread. So I will get back to you. Just give me 2 minutes and let me get to the end of the presentation. Yes. Focusing on this one, what I was trying to say is that in option two, when we say it reduced everything, it's not actually to be interpreted literally. We're not actually saying, reduced in size. So minuteness is not going to work. Let's get rid of option two. It reduced everything to the randomness of objects, doesn't make sense. So let's reduce option three. Now, the fourth one sounds really weird, right? It reduced everything to the equality of objects. Doesn't really sound great. But then the thing is that the understanding of objects also doesn't really work. So let me say that we'll keep 1 and 4, and then we'll look at the rest of the options and see what works. So I've eliminated 3. I'm still left with 2. Everything became expensive because everything became a commodity. But not all commodities are expensive, right? So I would say that option one doesn't really work. Let's look at option four. Can I say everything became exchangeable because everything became a commodity? That makes sense. A commodity can be traded, it is up for exchange. Now I just need to check the last one. All reality was mechanically measured by its materiality. Kind of makes sense. So the only one that I would be in a little bit of doubt about would be the second blank. But even if there is some doubt, I would still say, okay, you know what? It's fine. I can't be absolutely sure, but the rest of the 3 blanks make sense. So let me just pick option 4 as the answer. Minuteness is also a level. Let me just think about that a little bit. Okay. Yeah. When we say that, I examined it in minute detail, then it means that I examined it at a very tiny level. So, in a way, yes, it is a level. So, can we look at it some other way? Okay. Uh, let's look at the first blank. Oil painting did to appearance what capital did to social construction. So, the first blank also may not really ring, you know, it doesn't really make sense to me because we're not really trying to construct anything. What we're really trying to do is that oil painting changed the appearance of things. Similarly, capital kind of affected the social structure. I mean, that would be my understanding of the first sentence. But I think construction is going to be a little far fetched, even if we kind of interpret minuteness as a level. The rest of it still makes sense, honestly. I mean, I could say that everything became commercial because everything became a commodity, makes sense. All reality was mechanically evaluated, also makes sense. So, if I have to find another reason to maybe eliminate the second option, I think I would go back to the first blank. All right, moving on. Please try this one. I think this one is fairly easy, even if you don't know a few words. Okay, there was one point about the previous question. Let me just finish this one and then we will go back to the previous one. Now, again, same method, read the whole thing and maybe come up with your own answer, which in this case, I think is possible. The moment we no longer have a free press, anything can happen. What makes it, I would probably say, what makes it possible for a totalitarian or any other dictatorship to rule is that. So, if I want to say possible, obviously I'm going to lean towards the first option. Looks good so far. Now, could it be the other options? Let's check. What makes it unique for a totalitarian or other dictatorship to rule is that. But we're not talking about a unique dictatorship. We are trying to say that if we don't have a free press, then there are consequences to that. And that kind of leads to totalitarianism. So if you read the whole paragraph, it kind of has that theme. So we're not talking about a unique situation. We are talking about a general situation of what happens in the absence of a free press. So two must be eliminated. The third one, absurd. What makes it absurd? Absurd means something that it cannot be explained logically, right? So I can't say that it is illogical for a totalitarian or a dictatorship to rule. Option 3 is eliminated. The fourth one, what makes it necessary for a dictatorship to rule? We're definitely not trying to say that a dictatorship is necessary. The fifth one, what makes it unpleasant for a totalitarian or any other dictatorship to rule is that could be unpleasant. So let me just keep the fifth option, eliminate at least the remaining. I mean, I'm just keeping it because it's always good to have another option to work with. So let's get rid of 2, 3, and 4. Now, plebeians, this is a word you may or may not know. Plebeians are common people. They are kind of the opposite of the noblemen or the aristocracy. Okay. So if I start working with option number 5, it really doesn't make that much sense. Let's just look at the last blank. This is because lies by their very nature have to be changed, and a lying government has forced to rewrite its own history. That's not really what we're trying to say, are we? We're trying to say that because lies have to keep getting changed, so a government that lies has to keep rewriting its own history. No one is forcing the government to do it. And so option 5 can be eliminated as well. Option 1 works from the very start. So the moment you realize that we are talking about the possibility of a dictatorship in the absence of a free press, option 1 makes perfect sense. Absurd means something that is illogical. When we say something that is off is just weird or strange. Absurd definitely means beyond the bounds of logic. I think everything else is pretty easy to figure out. So please remember, new word, absurd, illogical, plebeians, common people. So it's not a good idea to simply go by what appeals to you. Please check the remaining blanks for logic. Okay. Now this one I think is fairly simple. It specifically tells you that you need to check the usage of prepositions. Let's look at the first one. The manager was sitting at the desk. We do say that I'm at my desk, so that's okay. My work is superior to yours. Again, we normally say inferior to or superior to. Please remember, we are checking for incorrect usage. Now, look at 3, 4, 5, and 6. Anything that sounds off to you? And here we cannot say absurd because absurd means illogical. It may not sound illogical, but still grammatically incorrect. Pick the one that is definitely wrong. Okay, the one that obviously looks wrong to me would be the sixth sentence, right? So here, you can't say they are leaving to England soon. You would normally say that they are leaving for England soon. Sorry, for. This is an exception to the rule. That's fine. She was accused for. Now, this one I think we have talked about, right? You are accused of something. In the same vein, You are found guilty of something, but we plead guilty to something. Somehow, these are words and phrases that are very often tested. So, the fourth one is definitely incorrect. The sixth one is definitely incorrect. And the third one is definitely incorrect. So, it should be I prefer coffee to tea. The format is prefer X to Y. So, 3, 4, and 6, which means option 3. Okay, now questions. Than yours. No. The second one, and this one I'm fairly sure of, it is always superior to and inferior to. Superior to and inferior to. Not superior than and inferior than. Okay. And here, in the same vein, I would also probably want to remind you that it is elder to and older than. And we use elder for family. Older than is non-family or objects. I think that's pretty much all that we can take from this. I prefer coffee over tea. No, you can't prefer something over something else. You prefer something to something else. See, which topic in grammar is important? Right now, I would say look at prepositions. But usually, there are 4 or 5 things that you should be studying. A lot of these have to do with subject verb agreement. I mean, here it's not really there, but this is a topic that you should always do. Modifiers, maybe to some extent pronouns. Then you also have prepositions and verbal idioms. You could also do tenses and conditional statements. And this I'm basing on the last 5 years only. So subject verb agreement has not been tested in that much detail. Pronouns, prepositions, and conditionals have been tested. My boss is superior than me would be incorrect. You have to say my boss is superior to me or inferior to me. So the moment you say superior or inferior, please use to. That's it. Okay, we have another fill in the blank. Please try this. A lot of times it's best to read the whole paragraph because you need to be able to say whether one blank needs to be different from or similar to another blank. So maybe use that as a clue. Okay, I think most of you have got the hint. So what we need to understand here is that when we are trying to say all 3 were unplanned, I would probably want to have something similar here in the first blank. Now, look at the last 2. They were something upon their discovery and they remained something well after their initial use. So, this blank and this blank kind of need to be the same, either synonymous or pretty much the same word. Okay. So, the moment I realized this, and why should they be the same? They were something upon their discovery and they remained the same. The word remained is the one that gives us a clue, right? So anything that has very different words for the last 2 blanks cannot be my answer. Let's look at the first one. This I think we can eliminate straight away. Okay. Let's look at the second one. Can we say that they were shocking upon their discovery and remained shocking well after their initial use? A little unlikely because after you have used something for a long time, it cannot continue to shock you. So option 2, I think, is eliminated. The third one, all three were unplanned, astonishing, and superb upon their discovery and remained superb well after their initial use. I would say let's keep option 3. The fourth one, astonishing, amazing, and amazing. Let's keep this as well. The fifth one also looks good. Unpredicted, unappreciated, unappreciated. Okay. Now, all three were unplanned. This is the next clue that should lead us to the answer. After unplanned, all three were unplanned, astonishing, superb, and superb. This could be my answer, but the reason that option 4 cannot be my answer is that all three words are pretty much synonymous. They're exactly the same, astonishing and amazing. I cannot repeat the same message 3 times. So option 4, I can eliminate on that basis. Now let's look at 3 and 5. How would you distinguish between these two options? Any ideas? Okay. So the way that I would probably look at it is look at the word unplanned, right? If it was unplanned, it means that people did not plan for these things to happen. They just happened. Yes. And the word that captures that probably is going to be unpredicted. Now let's look at the last two. Can something be unappreciated upon discovery? Yes. Can it remain unappreciated? Yes, it can. Now let's look at the third one. They were astonishing, superb upon their discovery, and remained superb well after their initial use. Honestly, there's not much wrong with option 3. It's just that the moment I say unplanned, unpredicted goes a little bit better with that same idea. So, a lot of it has to do with the way the sentence sounds. And here, someone was saying we cannot always go by the way it sounds, but in this case, that actually helps. Unplanned and unpredicted go together. It is the same idea. Unappreciated upon discovery and unappreciated after use also go together. So option 5 is probably the best one. All right, moving on. Now we go back to grammar, and this is a confusing one for a lot of people. So we have to pick the correct ones. Any ideas? Okay. So the answers are coming in. The phrase that I wanted to highlight is dispose of. Okay. First of all, it is dispose of with a single F. Dispose and dispose of have very different meanings. If we say dispose, or let's say if someone says that, man proposes and God disposes, what that really means is that God decides to provide or distribute resources. We can only propose. But when we say dispose of, okay, dispose of literally means to get rid of. And this is what we want to use. So option 1 is absolutely correct. Do you have any clothes you want to get rid of? So we have to say off. The second one, I know that in some native languages we see dreams, but in English we don't see dreams because you're asleep. So you have dreams. The one that needs to be corrected here is the word saw. So you have a dream. So the correct one would have been that I had a pleasant dream last night. The third one, again, people use this phrase, but it is incorrect to say many a times. It is many a time. This is one way to correct it. The second way to correct it is many times. Both of them mean exactly the same thing. I have done it many times safely, or I have done it many a time safely. So 3 is also incorrect. Now, since 2 and 3 are both incorrect, it could probably lead to the answer, but we might as well work through the rest. Cope up is not correct. We cope with difficulty. You need not give feedback to your employees. Now, here, a lot of people say you need not to give feedback. You don't need to do that. The moment you say you need not, you don't need the to. So 5 is absolutely correct. The sixth one, we already know that we are good at or bad at certain things. Good at or bad at. So the sixth one is also correct, which means that if I have to look for the answer, 1 is definitely correct. Then fifth is correct, sixth is correct, which means option 5. Isn't do missing in 1? Oh, okay. Not necessarily. We can say, do you have any clothes? But we can also say, have you any clothes? Both are acceptable. Have you got any clothes? Yeah. I mean, you could put the word got as well. It wouldn't be wrong. I'm just saying that it's not necessary. I had a dream. There is no rule. It's just convention. You have dreams. You don't see dreams. It's just that. So I cannot really provide a logic to that. Okay, the fifth one, in case you are confused. See, a lot of negative sentences require a particular sentence structure. You need not. Whenever you use this expression, you do not need the to. You need not do something, is what you need to say. That's all it is. I had a dream last night. It is correct. You can say, I have a dream. You can say, I had a dream. Both are correct. The only thing that you cannot say is, I saw a dream. You cannot see dreams. So just use have or had. Both are fine. Cope up is wrong. So you cope with something, you cannot cope up with something. Let's move on. Okay, now this is where we talk about conditional sentences. So when I mentioned tenses, I also added the conditionals bit. Here, in case you're not familiar with conditionals, just go by what it sounds like to you and see if you can pick out the incorrect ones. All right. Now here, there are 4 types of conditionals. I'm not going to go into the details. I'm just going to tell you what 4 types of conditionals are. Okay. So there is the zero conditional, which is something we use very frequently. The zero conditional typically is okay. So this is one. Then there is the first conditional. Second, third, Okay. So all you need to really notice is whether the first half and the second half match. That's it. Okay. Let's look at the first one. If Sandhya had started from the hotel on time, she would have not missed the flight. Well, I would have preferred it to be she would not have, but more or less it is okay. So I would say that the first one does not seem incorrect to me. Had started, would have. If you look at the third conditional here, it's very similar. Had studied, would have. The second one, the students wouldn't have completed their assignment even if the professor would have been there. This is wrong. And the reason that it is wrong is that we cannot have would have in both the parts. This is not going to work. So option 2 is definitely incorrect. So let's mark it as wrong. And the correct version here is going to be, in fact, the students wouldn't have completed their assignment even if the professor had been there. Now let's look at the third one. I had traveled across Europe if I weren't afraid of airplane crashes. It doesn't make any sense, right? When you say I had traveled, it seems like you actually did it. So this is definitely wrong. With had traveled, I would need to change the second half. So this could be one of the ways to correct it. I would travel across Europe if I weren't afraid of airplane crashes. So this is nothing but the second conditional. So 2 is wrong, 3 is wrong. Let's look at the fourth one. Saurav won't join music classes unless his father will ask him. Now here, since I'm saying an unless, I cannot say his father will ask him. I have to say unless his father asks him. So 4 is also wrong. The fifth one, should you wish to join the party, you must let me know by this evening. This is okay even though it sounds wrong because it's equal to saying that if you wish to join the party, you must let me know. So this is nothing but my first conditional. So fifth is okay. We would be stupid if we shared our strategy with her. Again, it's absolutely correct. So the three incorrect ones are 2, 3, and 4, which means that my answer will have to be, as a lot of people said, option 5. Okay, if you want me to explain 2, please look at the 0, first, second, and third. Okay, none of these conditionals have would have in both the parts. Okay, so what we want to say here is that even if the professor had been present, the students would not have done their assignment. So we need to say that the professor had been there, but the students would not have completed their assignment. So the moment we use the past perfect, and here I'm just trying to avoid all jargon, but I can't help it. The moment we use the past perfect in one part, had been, we have to combine it with a would have or a should have. Okay, the fifth one is right. The fifth one, I can simplify it. It is equal to saying if you want or if you wish to join the party, you must let me know by this evening. So instead of should you wish, we could have also said if you wish. It's exactly the same thing. It's just slightly formal English and we're not really used to it. Okay, so I'm going to give you another example. Should you want to swim, let me know. If you want to swim, let me know. That's all we're saying. It's a very simple sentence. Let's move on. Okay, now this is a question that I've seen only in 1 year. I've never seen anything like this before. So read the sentences and just pick the one that sounds wrong. And then we will talk about what a tag question is. Yeah, should kind of replaces if. I think most of you have figured it out. Okay. So first of all, what is a tag question? As the name indicates, it's like a mini question that is added to the end of a sentence. So I could have said, moreover, he plays well, full stop. So why do we ask a tag question? Usually it is for confirmation or to elicit someone's agreement. It's like saying, you're coming to the party, aren't you? You're seeking confirmation. So that is the function of a tag question. Now, there are certain rules that we follow in terms of tag questions. Let me just show the rules to you. First, we generally use the same subject and the same helping verb. Okay, what does that mean? You are working. Now, what is the subject here? You is the subject. What is the helping verb? Are. Now, I cannot go into what a helping verb is, but I'm just trying to tell you what the rule is. So we use the same subject and the same helping verb, which means that my tag question is going to make use of the same words as the original sentence. So my tag question becomes, aren't you? If there is no helping verb in the main sentence, then we use do. Now here, my subject is you, my main verb is work, but there is no helping verb. So my tag question becomes, don't you? So please use the same subject and please use the same helping verb. If there is no helping verb, then you will use do. Let's look at the first sentence now. Moreover, he plays well. Now, who is the subject here? He. So I should be using a he in the tag question also, which I have not done. And that is why the first one is definitely wrong, even if I'm not sure about the rest. So it should be, he plays well, doesn't he? You like to play, don't you? This is fine because you is my subject and I'm using don't you because there's no helping verb. Let's look at the third one. Nobody has called for you. Now, if your subject is nobody, then typically in the tag question, I will use they. All right. So the third one is absolutely correct. The rest of them are also fine. There is nothing wrong with saying he has few reasons for saying no to the match. Now, a lot of us might say here that it should be, hasn't he? But the rule says that this is allowed. Now, I think I'm trying to address the same point that you have raised, Shubham. A lot of times we might feel that it's normally positive followed by a negative. Yes, that's the thing you're trying to say. But in this case, there is a very specific addendum to that rule. We can use an affirmative tag after an affirmative sentence to express surprise or interest. So, if you do not see positive being followed by a negative, it is usually because I'm trying to indicate surprise. He has few reasons for saying no to the match, has he? Curiosity. So this is allowed. Now look at the fifth one. Same thing. There's little point in doing anything about the match. Normally we would say, isn't there? But if I'm trying to say I'm a little curious about this, then I would say, is there? That's also fine. So the answer finally is the first one. And why 4 and 5 are not the answer? Because of this rule. Why not the second one? What is wrong with the second one? We have to pick the incorrect one, right? So for those of you who are asking why is 4 not incorrect, please refer to this rule. If you want to show surprise, curiosity, interest, then you don't have to use a negative tag question. It's absolutely fine to use a positive one, even if your sentence is positive. Moving on then. Very simple question. Please take a look at it. I think it can be done in like 30 seconds. And to address your point, Adit, yes, if you had said, hasn't he, that would also be fine. Absolutely. Okay, as I said, easy question. Let's look at the first blank, right? Now, honestly, for the first blank, I can say restricted or limited. Now, here, let's not go by what sounds better, okay? So, let me allow both restricted and limited. But by the time we get to the last two blanks, I think the answer is pretty clear. Now, in this case, can we say when? We can. When they introduce new products, they open up innovative markets. But the problem is that usually it's innovative products and new markets. So, what we need to understand is that innovative fits better here, and here we should say new. So, the moment I get this logic, then the answer is very, very simple. I can now simply eliminate all the options that have this logic interchanged. So, for example, the first one is gone. I cannot say innovative markets. The product can be innovative, which can open up a new market for you. The second one also is gone. Third one kind of works. The fourth one, let's keep for now. And the fifth one also gets eliminated. Now I'm left with only two, right? So let's look at the second blank. If I say when they introduce innovative products, they open up new markets, it makes sense. So there's nothing wrong with three. Let's look at while. Whenever I use while as a conjunction, there is a problem. It means there is some sort of a contradiction between the remaining two halves of the sentence. While they introduce innovative products, they open up new markets, but there is no contradiction. One thing leads to the second thing. So I cannot use while, which means that I should cancel out option 4. So option 3 has to be my answer. Let's move on to the next one. Here you go. Please try it out. All right. Now, this seems to be a pretty abstract sort of a thing, right? So, I may not be very sure about the first blank. A map is a useful metaphor for our brain when talking about. What could we be talking about? Perception? Yes. Could be. Understanding? Yes. Design? Maybe. Comprehension? Maybe. So, the first blank is a little vague. Let's move on. Because at its most basic level, our brain is, or blank to be our atlas of sorts. So when we say that our brain kind of is an atlas, could we say evolved, progressed, changed, developed, metamorphosed? Yes. But at this point, we need to think. When we say evolved, it means gradual change over time. Okay. So this word kind of fits. Progress, we all know, changed does not really mean something that slowly happens over a period of time. So maybe not changed. Developed could work. Metamorphosed means that it has transformed, but the brain has not transformed completely. It has just changed in a manner that it allows us to navigate. So I think we should happily eliminate metamorphosed. Now, moving on, if we look at the others, and you'll have to excuse me again. Sorry about that. So, most of you, no, I'm not trying to play hide and seek. I'm really sorry. So, last time also I was struggling with my voice a little bit. It's a lot better today, but not quite 100% there. So, what I was trying to say is that here we are trying to say that our brain has changed to be an atlas of sorts. It is a system of roots. Now, here, what is the word that could be fit? Shaped to navigate? Not really. So, let's eliminate P. System of roots molded to navigate again does not quite fit. D also does not fit. See, no one on the outside is shaping or molding our brain, right? What we are trying to say that our brain has automatically kind of changed in a fashion that it is meant to navigate us towards one destination, which is survival. So the word that fits best is designed. And therefore, I should be able to reach the first option simply by looking at maybe the second and the last blank. Even if I'm not really sure of what the first blank is going to be, it's actually all right as long as I'm able to make sense of the paragraph from the last two. So, why did we pick designed? Shaped and molded normally indicates that someone is doing it for us. But this is not hard only for you. I mean, it is not a very easy question. At the very beginning, it seems to be a little abstract. So, it is hard in general, it's not just hard for you. Now, here, I hope you understand what perception is. Perception is basically the way that we understand the world. So, perception, comprehension, both of these could have been our answers, but we eliminated metamorphosed simply because we wanted to say change over time. And therefore, the word evolved fits best. Okay, now let's look at grammar again. Here, we need to pick the grammatically incorrect sentences. So, take a look, see if you can find the errors. How many more questions do we have to do? See, it's entirely up to you to stay online, right? It's free will. No one is asking you to stay here. So if you want to maybe just take a break, go away and revisit this later, that's absolutely fine. We do have to make progress till XAT 2018 if you want to look at it that way. Okay. Now, let's look for the very obvious errors. So here I have good knowledge of German. Maybe it sounds right to a lot of us. So for now, let's keep it. Is there anything that you see that is absolutely and definitely wrong? Okay. Now, the first one has a missing article. What we really need to say here is that I have a good knowledge of German. What is the rule that is implied? I can't say because this again is convention. It's like saying a hard day's work, a good night's sleep. Similarly, a good knowledge of German, right? So this is just how it operates. Except for Rajiv, everybody was there. Sounds correct. Whole Delhi. This is wrong, however. We would have to say the whole of Delhi was celebrating. So 3 is also wrong. The fourth one I want to highlight, whenever we have neither nor, okay, this is a case of subject verb agreement. So please keep in mind that the verb always agrees with the nearer subject. What that means is, when I say neither the dog nor is the cat, my verb here actually is. Now, how do I know whether I should say is or are? In this case, I guess is sounds right because both dog and cat are singular. So is the correct verb to use. But a lot of times, if you're confused, just make sure that the verb always agrees with the nearer subject. So in this case, the cat is or the dog is. Both will work. He knows to swim. This has a problem. When I read it the first time, it sounded absolutely fine to me. But then, of course, when I looked at the response sheet, I thought, okay, yes, it should probably be he knows how to swim. This is the correct version. The last one is absolutely correct. I look forward to seeing you again. Please note, it is okay to say to seeing you because I look forward to doing something is the way that we normally use this expression. What about entire Delhi? Um, can we say entire Delhi? I really don't know if that is right because we would not usually use that expression. We would say all of Delhi or the whole of Delhi, or we would say the entire country. So normally, the entire country, there is a the entire group, but we would normally not say entire India. So before a proper noun, we typically don't use the word entire. Yeah. So the answer here obviously is the third one. We usually say, I look forward to see you. So you have to stop saying that now. You have to say, I look forward to seeing you. That is the correct way to say it. You have to pick the grammatically correct sentence, and we have discussed this expression earlier. So I think this should be pretty simple for you. Okay. Now remember, I said that whenever you use this expression, you had better, it is kind of like saying you should. So, what kind of a sentence should follow you should? You have to use the same logic. Yeah. So, we have to use the simple present. You had better tell her everything. It is equal to saying you should tell her everything. So, anything that says told is definitely wrong. This is a problem. This is a problem. So, A and B are out. We still have C, D, and E. Now, you better had is incorrect. It is always you had better. So D and E are out, which means the C is the right answer. It's a very simple question. Everyone's grammar is poor, okay? No one's grammar is great, and grammar is probably a weak point with me also because I did not learn grammar until much later in life. Most of the stuff that I learned about the English language came from reading. So I know that it's cliched to say you should read and that is how you improve your language, but it's also true. What is the difference between C and D? You had better versus you better had. So you have to say you had better. Okay, now it's your typical close paragraph. It's just that the text was a little lengthy, so I had to put the options on the right hand side. The words are a little more interesting though. Okay, so there are at least two words that you may not know. There is a specific question about active and passive voice. Okay, it's not relevant to this, but if there are two options which are absolutely the same, there is nothing else that will distinguish those options, and one is in passive voice and one is in active, then you would always choose the one that is in active voice because it's usually more crisp, it is shorter. So, all else being equal, choose active over passive. Just like, if all else is equal, we will usually choose a shorter sentence. I know it's a mistake. I'm sorry about that. So let me hide the answer again. It's just that a tap of the mouse is just enough to do this. My mistake. I'm really sorry. My hand hit the wrong spot on the keypad and it just happened. Anyway, let's move on. Now, if I look at the first blank, okay, what we are talking about is this punishment of sorts that has landed on this person. So when we say that, this person has to roll a rock up the mountain and the rock rolls back down, what is the word that we could possibly pick? It's not a surrender. So I definitely cannot pick one. It's not a choice. It's not symbolizes. Could it be a quandary? Could be. Yeah. Attune simply means that you are in tune with or you're aligned with something. So it cannot be five. Option, not really. Because A. So it's not an option. Reconcile depicts none of them. So the only option I can pick is 4, which means I should cancel out 3 and 5. Now, even if I don't know the meaning of the word, I would still probably pick quandary because none of the others picked, right? So quandary is equal to pareshani. Yeah. It's basically a dilemma. So this will fit. Now, once I get this far, the rest of it is not very difficult, honestly. Even if you don't know this word, it's still okay. So I've eliminated 2 options. Now let's look at the second one. Camus argues that this image blanked the human condition in a word. Now, can I pick 1? No. 2? No. Symbolizes? Yes. Okay, so the there are a lot of comments here which I can probably not address in this session, but for now, let me just say that even if you're not very sure of the vocabulary, a lot of times logic will still lead the way, right? So here, when we say that Camus argues that this image, can I say surrender and choice? No. Can I say symbolizes? Yes. Can I say depicts? Yes. So I definitely know that it can be either 3 or 8, right? So the moment I know that 8 is not really a choice, I would go for 3. So I know that for the first blank, I need 4. For the second blank, I need 3. So my answer therefore is option 2. It's plain and simple. So there is no reason for me to go to option 4. 5, attune means to align with or to be in tune with something, right? But we are trying to say that this image represents the human condition, right? So symbolizes is the best word. And therefore option 2, I don't even need to go to the third blank. Plain and simple. Let's move on. All right. Now, in the first blank, we can say whereas or we can say while, right? No problem either way. So we will have to look at the rest of the blanks also. So take a look at the rest. What we're trying to say is that in one space, we have looked at horizontal stratification, but we have not really paid so much attention to it in another space. So that is the logic. So what should the answer be? Yeah. So if I understand the logic as horizontal stratification in higher education has been widely acknowledged. So let's look at the second blank because that's the easiest one. It cannot be with, so option 1 is out. It cannot be on because we are talking about stratification in higher education, right? So it cannot really be about either. Can it be within? Yes. Can it be without? No. So even if I just look at the second blank, the answer is very clear. It has to be option 4. It cannot really be anything else. So again, sometimes there is a very easy way of solving the question. You don't really have to finish the entire paragraph. The moment I realize that the second blank can only be within, I will not even look at any other option. So option 4 is the correct one. Plain and simple. Okay. Now, here, typically you do not get these kind of questions, but this was slightly different. So please look at the question itself. You need to find the closest antonym of the highlighted word. Why not without? Because we are talking about looking at something within a bigger sphere, and that is why we cannot say without. Without means outside of something. Now, let's look at this. It looks like a very easy question, but actually it is not. It's conventional wisdom that procreation between first cousins is unhealthy. But what are the actual genetic risks? Now, the word actual means real. Yes? So, what is the answer? So, here there are only two possibilities. Okay. Let's eliminate the most obvious ones. It cannot be hard, right? So, this is out. It cannot be relative. Yes. Now, the opposite of actual cannot really be tangible. Tangible means concrete, right? So it's very close to the word actual. So let's get rid of option 3 also. So I hope you realize we're looking for an antonym, right? So that leaves us with 1 and 5. Now please remember that abstract means not concrete. Unfounded means not based on reality or logic. So between 1 and 5, it's a slightly more difficult choice. We would contrast abstract with material. We would contrast unfounded with actual or real. So given that we are looking for the closest antonym, option 1 is better, unfounded. So in case you're wondering why not abstract, it is simply because abstract is usually the opposite of something material, concrete. Abstract means you cannot really see it or touch it, but that's not really what we are trying to say. Where is it mentioned that we need to find the antonym? It's right here in the instructions. Closest antonym. Okay. Now, as you can see, I'm still struggling with my voice a little bit. So since we've almost reached 9 o'clock, the instruction is not fully visible, is it? I'm sorry about that. Okay, right. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm going to wrap up the session. I did want to, however, acknowledge a mistake that I made, and one of the students pointed it out. So let me just go back to that slide. And we're going to end here primarily because we're out of time, but more importantly, because I may not be able to speak for too long. And I just wanted to wish you all the best. Before that, let me just go back and acknowledge the mistake that I made so that that does not remain on your minds. Just give me 1 minute. Right. So this is the one that I made a mistake on, and one of you did point it out. So I went back and I checked the actual question paper. The answer to this question is actually option 1. It's not option 5. Okay, so just wanted to correct that. The GMAT club is actually good for critical reasoning. It's excellent. In fact, I believe that the GMAT critical reasoning is pretty rigorous. For XAT, it's not usually that rigorous, but if you're absolutely new to it, it would be a good idea to start there. So from my side, I wish you all the best. The whole idea of this was to just make sure that you are familiar with the question types that you will be facing in the exam. You always have my blessings. All the best. And just make sure that you go to the exam with positivity, regardless of your level of preparation. Bye-bye. Good night. Okay. Last few questions. It's very important for you to clear the sectional cutoff. If your verbal is weak, just focus on clearing the cutoff. Don't answer questions if you're not absolutely sure of it. Tomorrow, I think you can definitely take one more mock. Okay? So with that, I'll close. Good night.